We're here joined by Bill Spindle, the Middle East Bureau Chief for the Wall Street Journal, making a special appearance here in New York in our studio, in from Dubai. Thanks for joining us here. You can see instability all across the Middle East right now, particularly concerns about Iran with the sanctions coming up in the next few days. What are those sanctions going to mean for the region as a whole?
Well, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me. I think the sanctions, will continue to tighten, but in a sense, they, in a real sense, they kind of promote stability. In the sense that what we're really worried about here is that the negotiations will break down, that we'll be back in a world where we're guessing whether Israel will or won't attack Iran, and that's really the instability. So I think as long as the sanctions are in place and having an effect, that will keep the Israelis satisfied, that will keep the U.S. somewhat satisfied, and if the Iranians are staying in the negotiations on some level, then I think we're probably in a pretty decent place. Where we begin to worry is if you really see a breakdown of the negotiations, if they both walk away from the table, then I think you're in a scarier place.
Meanwhile, we see Syria going in these directions where you'd think there might be a big breakthrough, or that it's going to boil over and then everything just goes to a standstill. You can see some of the images here from Syria. What's the latest there, and what's the outlook for
Well, I think what we've seen in the last couple of days is just how dangerous the situation in Syria really is with the downing of this jet. I mean, we've really come quite close to the beginning of a regional war, and that's why you've seen the Turks who are not taking this lightly, but you can see how cautious they're really being because we're that close to a regional war, and if we start to see that happen, whether it spills over on the northern side or the southern side or wherever, it's going to start spilling out on all sides, and everybody who's involved with this is acutely aware of this and moving very cautiously, but there's no real prospect for a resolution either, so it's quite a grim situation.
You've followed this for many, many years. If you go back 18 months from when the Arab Spring started with Tunisia and it spread to Egypt, there was this big hope that you're going to see the revolutions spread across the Middle East, and that
this is
the
of democracy across the Middle
new
East.
wave. And this obviously isn't how people expected it to be, but when you look at what just happened in recent days in Egypt, where are we with the Arab Spring as a movement?
Well, I think we were in clearly the Arab Spring led directly to this election in Egypt, so there's this direct connection, but the path along the way has been a very bumpy one, and I think, again, there you saw how close we came to a very, I think would have been a very instability-creating solution if Shafiq, the person who was sort of representing the old regime, had won this, and he came very close to doing it, and we really came close to seeing the old regime sort of completely reinstall itself. That hasn't happened, so I think that leaves an opening for continued change over time, but we've seen this has not been an easy process. It's not been a pretty process, and that's for sure what's going to continue going forward.
And are we going to see some kind of alliance between Egypt and Iran, and some joining of forces there that creates some concern?
No. I think I think the Muslim Brotherhood coming to the fore in Egypt creates a lot of new challenges for the region. It especially creates challenges for Israel. It creates challenges for the U.S. It really changes the game in many ways, but I think the idea of an alliance between Iran and Egypt is not in the offing at all. But that doesn't mean that there's not going to be big challenges that come out of this.
And you're sitting here in the U.S. There's interest in all of these regions. Are you picking up anything here in the U.S. about how this movement's being received?
I think the U.S. is proceeding pretty cautiously. I think they've decided that, and I think they made clear to the generals in Egypt that the best situation is to let the vote fall where it may. If that's with the Muslim Brotherhood, then yeah, that creates some real challenges and difficulties, but better than
right.
Overturning it and really causing a lot of angst and instability that would grow out of that.